Well, Rob Ross was I don't know if it's a regional brand, but you could actually find Rob Ross food products on the shelves. They were going to make pickled corn, and they did for a while, and the corn they would make would be immature. So the job was to go out in the morning and pull that off and throw it into a big hopper. And I remember they gathered us together in a field, first day, first field, and one of the bosses said, "How many people are here?" And I said something like, loud enough for him to hear, "Oh, about 12. And then he said, "You want to be a comedian? Get out of my," I almost got fired that first day. But that was not a pleasant job, because first thing in the morning, a lot of dew on the corn, and it was cold. But you would take the corn off and throw it in a long, narrow hopper that would go between the rows, and there was sort of like a spider-like motorized thing that would go up and down the fields. And I remember the big draw to this was it was such a fancy food, they were going to serve it on airlines. Yeah. So yeah, and then there was another crew that would be in at the processing plant, and they would God, I don't think they do this today. They all had like box cutters or something, and they would cut it open and shuck the corn, and then they would pickle it, and I don't know if they ever sold any of it.
The shucks, if you shuck corn, I think it was 60 cents for a bushel. If you did a bushel of corn, I think it was 60 cents. Wow. And for the doing the picking the corn was, I think, $1.10 an hour. Wow. And if you were the driver of the vehicle, I think it was $1.25 an hour. I think those were the rates that we worked at out there.
Well, I didn't know him personally, but there was one kid who lived in the country right near where the processing plant was, and I don't know if they rate this, but when it comes to shucking corn, this kid was a genius, because he made a lot of money. He made enough money to buy a bicycle. I do remember that, and they were talking about him. It's like he was. If you could have a hero in a group of corn shuckers, he was the guy. But for some reason, they would have huge bottles of this, and they had every once in a while they had a reject, and they would put one in the. I don't know why they would put it in the window. It had a few flies right up against the inside of the glass, and that was next door to our sewage treatment plant. And we would sometimes they would go over to Sioux City and pick up these kids, and I don't know how anybody could not realize this was a sewage plant, but some of them would go swimming in that. Not for very long, but they would do that.
Tell them about the other summer jobs. It typically was done in Iowa.
All right. In Iowa, in the summer, you could always mow lawns, but that was probably for $1, a few dollars. But you go out you could walk beans. This was the time before they had any type of herbicide that you could spray on the beans that would kill the weeds and not kill the beans. And I remember farmers saying, if somebody can come up with something that will kill the weeds and not kill the beans, they'll make billions. And then Monsanto did. But at that time, there was the only way to do that was, it was called walking beans. If there weren't many weeds, you could take 3 or 4 rows on each side, and you just walk up and down these fields. And if the field had been planted in corn the last year, there would be some volunteer corn coming up, and you'd have a hoe or a machete, and you just chop it down. And then some areas were just covered with weeds, and you'd get like $1 an hour for that. And every farmer I ever worked for had a different name for the same weed. Some would call it a buttonweed. Oh, that's a pigweed. And then, but you'd have to get all that out. And another job you have is baling hay. And you would, they don't have that type of bale anymore. They roll it into huge huge rolls.
Cylinder, yeah.
Yeah, that are lifted up by a forklift. But back then, it'd be about 4 foot long by 2 foot high. It's kind of a rectangular, and they would weigh between 60 and 80 pounds, depending on how hot it was. And you'd be riding behind on a flatbed, and you'd have this nice long hook, and you would grab the bale when it would come out, and then you'd stack it on the back, and you'd go up 5 or 6 high, And that was just really hard work. And sometimes if they raised oats, when they would harvest the oats, the straw was left over, and that was like getting a reprieve, you know, because that was very light. That was only like 20-some pounds, and they only used that for bedding. But that was a lot of hard work.
And you did a lot of painting also.
Yes, I to this day, I have dreams that I haven't finished a barn. It's always a barn. It's always a white barn that I'm thinking, God, I've got to go out and finish that thing, and this is going on too long. And then I wake up, and sometimes I am painting a house. It's always for a nice couple, like an old couple, but this house, every time I get one room done, I walk through, and then there's a whole wing that I have to paint. I'm thinking, I am never going to get done with this. But I picked that up from my dad. He always painted after he got done delivering mail, and when I was 14, he let me help. And then I would go out and paint on my own, and made some outlandish, like $4, maybe $5 an hour. But you'd have to paint the whole house. You'd have to.
But you left signatures, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, that embarrassing. When I would paint places, I had the tendency to paint my name in inconspicuous spots. At the time, teenager or something like that, I thought this is really cool. And now people have come back to those same houses and found my name there, and it's just humiliating. I mean, I painted my name on the bell of St. Michael's Church. Big old letters, and I can't imagine anybody going up there and erasing it now, but it's all over the church. And I've been here back for the Quadricentennial, and a couple of people have stopped me and said, we painted that, and we saw your name, and we signed our name. And somebody told me, you have to sign your name if you're painting the church because it's good luck. I had no idea. I just thought it was tacky. So,
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.